My presentation is not very creative. It has only one slide, so I have to apologize. I have been a little bit lazy. But I think it's important to structure a speech, and I have 5 views on that slide. But before I start, I would like to introduce to you what I do today. Today I run TUI, a touristic company, which serves around about 20 to 22 million customers around the world. We operate 145 aeroplanes, 360 hotels, 3 cruise companies, and destination, 70,000 people in destination, more than 100 countries who serve our customers abroad. Now, this industry is a very traditional industry. It's an industry which is, when you look at technology infrastructure, how important technology is, it's much less advanced than the industry you are in. So the Bitkom industry, the IT and telecommunication industry. But even more, I think it's important, or it's interesting, that when you look back, and it's now 4 years ago when I left telecommunication, when you look back, what actually remained and what actually are the most important things you really remember. And the interesting thing about views of a veteran, that it's necessarily a little bit black and white. It's a little bit 10,000 meter perspective, and it is very, very blunt. So I don't need to take certain interest into account because I don't have a vested interest in your industry anymore. And therefore, don't take it so serious if I talk about things. Sometimes a little bit truth in the core, but sometimes a little bit over-exaggerated what I say. Now, let me talk a little bit about the Valley. I think the Valley is about many things. It's about ambition, dedication, focus, but I don't think it is so much about technology. And when I hear that many of my fellow CEOs travel into the Valley to learn about technology, I think somehow it makes me laugh a little bit. I think when I have been heading Vodafone Ventures, which is the private equity arm for Vodafone in the Silicon Valley for 10 years, and I was on the investment committee actually to invest into startup companies or early stage companies. And when I look at an average company, which was successful after 3 years, this company might have had 200 employees. In the beginning it had 0, so after 3 years it had 200, so on average 100. And let's assume for a moment that all of these 100 are software developers, so you don't have anybody else. Then you have 100 man-years, 300 man-years of software development after 3 years, right? Which equates to around about 30 to 50 million euros or dollars invested capital, if you like. If I think about my budgets for IT at Vodafone in Germany, which were mainly targeted to billing system, administration systems and these, I think it was, if I call it correctly, around about 300 million per year, just Germany. So why is it important to have invested 30 to 50, and why is it so big? It is not. When I came to the telecommunication, when I came to the travel industry, I phoned up one old colleague of mine. He was an intern with me at Vodafone, Rolf Schrömgens. He is one of the 3 founders of Trivago. The company, I don't know if you know what they do, they are meta searchers in the travel industry. It's a click-through model. And when I visited him, the company was 5 years old. It was active in 30 countries. It had 100 million euro of revenues, of which 80 million were advertising, 5 million overhead, and 15 million EBITDA. And at that time, they had just sold 60% of it with a 50 times multiple of EBITDA, 50. This company was not a technology company. This company was dedication, ambition, a world market leader in meta search. You define a market and you are a world market leader, right? I said to Rolf, Rolf, I have a great idea. I have some distressed assets in my 360 hotels. Next Sunday, next week, or the next month, I want to fill some rooms. It's a so-called late business, right? I said, why don't you have a lot of eyeballs on your site with meta search? Why don't I put my hotels on your site? And he thought about it 5 minutes and he said, it's not our core business. I mean, what does that say about focus? It says this, fully priced. Their proposition is more than 1 million hotels, everything in the world available, fully priced. Their proposition is not late, and so on and so on. And I think what you can learn in the Silicon Valley is dedication, focus, incredible ambition, incredible dedication. I mean, think about legislation in Germany, how many work hours and so on. You are officially allowed to let people work and so. I mean, we have this discussion in the public. What kind of legislation in co-determination should apply? I think an enormous difference. When you see the level of dedication and ambition when you go there. The second thing I want to mention about the Valley is it's about reach and not about customers. I think when customers are the people who pay you something. I mean, that is what customers are. If you had to pay 5 cents, just 5 cents, for a Google search, how big would Google be? Nobody would pay 5 cents. The people who are customers to Google are the people who pay the ads. Everybody else is reach. And therefore, I think personally that it is not very likely that you will see Google cars, because then Google would do products where customers had to pay something, and that is totally not in their DNA. I think everything you see in Google is reach and is free. And you saw on Android, it's exactly the same thing. Initially, they charged a little bit, and then eventually it came for free. When you look at the APIs for artificial intelligence, I just spent a couple of weeks in the Silicon Valley. You see, it's free, and it is actually reach, and that's what this company is about. Now, maybe to close this, Apple and Tesla are different kind of companies. These are product companies, and these are not what I call the increasing economies of scale, not the typical internet companies which we always talk about. By the way, Trivago is a similar thing, right? So they don't collect anything from customers. It's just eyeballs and reach and being and size. Now let's talk for a moment about politics and regulation. I had not understood why net neutrality is a good thing when I was part of your industry, but at that time I couldn't say it, because it was politically not correct. Everybody would have said, you telecommunication industry, you have vested interest and you want to collect money from Google and so on. I think, now I'm 4 years out, and now I can say it. Why do I think that why do I think net neutrality does not create value? In strategy, we have learned that creation of value is related to vertical integration of a stack. And I think what you do with net neutrality, you cut the stack into 2 pieces. One is the infrastructure, and one is actually content. And when you have net neutrality, you don't allow values to either flow from top to down or bottom up. And in all fairness, I don't even want to be prescriptive it flows this or this. In cable industry, we have seen both directions. Sometimes content paid for distribution, and sometimes, the networks paid for content in order to create differentiation. So both happened, and sometimes also both at the same time. Certain content was paid for, and certain content paid for actually distribution. I think what we do today and what I see today, and when I look at the market capitalization of the existing companies, there is a lot of reason to assume that if we had in the internet the net neutrality dismissed, that there would be a lot of payment from actually content to networks, which today don't happen. And I think personally that that would create value. I think personally this would be an enormous driver of infrastructure built out in Europe. I think it would be very beneficial. Yes, there is an argument that potentially new innovative company would not be carried. I don't think that would happen. I don't think it would happen. But if it happened, there's a lot of regulation already in place if you have a market power and misuse it, that you can regulate markets after the fact, and if you see there is a misuse. But to assume that there is value creation in net neutrality, I think is an enormous misjudgment. And as I say, I think it would be very, very strong to have a vertical integration of content on infrastructure, and it would be enormously beneficial for the innovation and for the capitalization of our industries in Europe. Now, my second point is, I think, on the other hand, that a European single market would enormously create value. And Torsten, we have been in our industry, and it was E+, and then was O2, and then Vodafone, and is cross-border consolidation possible, or are we too big? And you are O2 and A+ merger, and then on roaming. If I had to advise, and I was responsible still for a telecommunication company. Now I'm touristic, nobody will listen to me. But if I had to advise, I would say foster consolidation throughout Europe, but forbid roaming. We need to create a European single market. Because if we believe that the internet companies are all about reach, and if we believe that these companies are increasing economies of scale, if we believe that all is that's true, then it's very clear that all the companies who are reliant on reach and first mover takes all will develop their solutions in the US first. Because you have a single, very big market. And we will be always the second. And if we are lucky, we are the second. In our industry, in the touristic industry, as well as in the IT industry, what I think happens already today is that the Chinese are second. You see Baidu's, you see the Alibabas, but also in my industry, Ctrip, Qna, monstrous companies. I think Ctrip or Qna, one of the companies I visited in China, they said, we are the biggest touristic companies. We stopped mobile. We stopped online development. We are just doing mobile. We have 800 million downloads of our apps with 300 million active users. Can you imagine where we are with our biggest market, Germany? This is, I think, the biggest block of technical innovation in Germany or in Europe is these micro markets. Portugal, but also Germany is way too small. And we need to have a couple of big European players for infrastructure. And that would create enormous value. That would create enormous value. Now, my last one is actually skate where the puck is going to be. So if I was an entrepreneur and I was starting a company, what would I look at? And I have actually now a little bit of hobby, but a little bit also for my new company, thought about all kinds of different things which could be applicable in the future. We looked at artificial intelligence. We looked at sharing economies, all the Airbnbs and so on and so on. At the end of the day, many of these things will happen, but I personally believe that strategically, the blockchain is the most promising technology for any value development in the next 5 to 10 years. So why do I think that? And of course, when I look around, I was at developer conferences in the last year in several countries. You see all the fintechs and so on, and they go, yeah, world needs banking, but no banks, and this open and trusted ledger. It seems to be somehow appealing to many. Now, the question is, And that was what I wanted to share with you. The question is, why do I think this will happen? Now, the internet, or when I started as a software developer, let's say in 1990, and I wanted to do a software development for somebody, a software service for somebody, I needed an IT infrastructure, so a big basement and a mainframe, 360, 370, whatever, and you needed to offer that. The entry barriers were very high. If you want to do that today, you just get a hosting center, hosting service, Amazon Cloud or whatever. Yeah, you go IBM, and you build services, and even if you have 10,000 requests per second, that's all nice. It's not a big issue. So when we do services for third party in TUI and our websites and dynamic packaging of travel, of journeys, we always do it in hosting centers, like I think many of you use them. And if we have, as I said, 10,000, 20,000 requests per second, it's not a big problem. But it's still hierarchical infrastructure. You have server clients architectures. So you have people who are privileged in the network and people who are less privileged in the network. And blockchain is unresolving this, because blockchain fully distributes knowledge, and everybody is client and server at the same time. So everybody has access to the same information. And that is done in a way that, it is very safe. So when you look at the encryption algorithms, when you look at how the blockchain is actually constructed and the technology, it's very safe and it's very flat. So you don't have privileged infrastructures. I think this is a true difference to actually the internet of today, because today you always have the people who own the servers, who have all the customer data, and then you have clients. That is a hierarchical structure, and it has also security issues. When you think about how much technology you put into your networks in order to secure that who you are requested by is really existing, or the guy who is actually trying to get access, that you are really somebody who is authentic, authentic partner to do transactions with SIM cards and so on and so on. In the blockchain, that you don't need all this, and you have a little bit of a drawback because of the enormous redundancy of data, because everybody can have everything and all data are everywhere. But with the Merkle tree and hash architecture, I think there is a very elegant solution to this. So my personal view is it will be an enormous application for an enormous variety of services. I think all Industry 4.0, how do you want to do post-processing? How do you want to authenticate a certain probe or a certain detector, in a machine, and how do you want to do this? With blockchain, it's very easy. When you have, I talked about the financial industry. Again, the same. It's very easy. It's very flat. So I think it's a great technology. We have our best technical strategists at TUI to think about how this makes a difference for us. Hotel inventory systems, flight inventory system, yield systems. All our systems of the future will be blockchain technology systems. And this is a mature technology. It is something, you can buy blockchain as a service. I found very interesting, the biggest number of blockchain as a service companies I find in East Germany now. So I think it is an enormous buzz. It is a great thing, and somehow because it's so flat and it is so secure, I think it will be the next big thing. Now, as I said, if I was an entrepreneur, I would do something here, but I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of ideas in other fields as well. So you have seen, it was just 5 things. Dedication instead of technology, reach instead of customers. Forget about net neutrality, but think about a single European market. And if you want to do something which is a big thing tomorrow, my personal view is it's a blockchain. With that, I want to close my remarks, and thank you very much.